Excuse me. It's good to see you. If you're I'm a little loud here. Thank you. That's much better. It's good to see you this morning. Some of you I just met this morning. It's good to meet you. Those of you that are guests, thank you for coming and worshiping with us. I hope you'll have a good time as we get into the beginning of a new series. We're beginning a series today called Socks and Underwear. Now, when we were talking in the pastor's meeting about various topics we could talk about during the Christmas season, this is a Christmas-centered series. Somebody brought this one up, and I wasn't crazy about it initially, but I kind of like the byline. It's not what you want, it's what you need. And if you're a visitor here, you don't know that I have on occasion preached a sermon in character where I dress up like somebody. It was suggested in this meeting that I preach this series dressed up as Captain Underwear. But given my propensity for wardrobe malfunctions, Patty vetoed that. So we'll spare you that. Reminds me of a story. This actually is true. Happened in our life, early in our marriage. I don't remember if we had 2 or 3 kids, but that was obviously early on. And we went for Christmas to my grandmother's house in South Carolina. We lived in Florida at the time. And Patty's mom sent gifts for us to open on Christmas Day. And so on Christmas Day, we're opening the gifts, and it came my turn to open the gift from my mother-in-law. I opened it up, and it was rabbit ear antenna for a television. We didn't have a television. This is true. And I thought, well, but it said right on the outside, Kmart, and had the price $15.99, and we were poor enough at that time that $15.99 was significant to us. So I said, well, I'd be happy if she sent me a check for $15.99, so I'll just take it back to Kmart tomorrow. And I did. The day after Christmas, I go to Kmart, I take it back, they take it, give me my $15.99, I thank them, and I go home. And later that evening, Patty calls her mom. She said, Mom, why'd you send Danny rabbit ear antenna? She said, that box didn't have antenna in it. There was about $45 worth of t-shirts and underwear and socks packed in that box, which would have been much more valuable to me than the $15.99 I got. But I can just think of the guy who showed up at Kmart to buy an antenna. And he got home and he unpacked my t-shirts. Thank you, Randy. That was a funny story, and it did occur. But, sometimes, just like the video was saying there, sometimes we get what we need, not necessarily what we want. And that's true in the Christian life as well. In the series that we're going to start here, we're going to talk about several different occasions where that happened in the Word, where what was expected or what was sought wasn't what was gotten, and what was gotten was much better. And we're going to start that today with Zacchaeus. But if you would join me in prayer before we get started. Thank you, Lord, for your goodness. Thank you that you know our needs much better than we know how to want. And that you meet those needs before we even know to ask for it. And we're grateful for that. Lord, as we get into your word, I pray that by your Spirit you would open it to us, that we might understand the words of life. That you would teach us, for I can't teach anything of value. But if you'll teach us, Lord, it'll be of great value in our life. And we'll grow up in you. We'll grow in grace and in the knowledge of you is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, we're going to take the story of Zacchaeus today. Remember Zacchaeus? He was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. We sang about that in Sunday school growing up, right? But we're going to pick up the reading about it in Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. You'll read with me. Then Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. Now behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. And he sought to see Jesus, see who Jesus was, but could not because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. So he ran ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him and said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house. So he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. But when they saw it, they all complained, saying, he's gone to be a guest with a man who is a sinner. Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, look, Lord, I give half my goods to the poor. And if I've taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost. Aren't we grateful for that?
Amen.
Let's give the context here of this story. So I'm going to give you some of what happened in the chapter prior to this, and then we'll come back and break that story down just a little bit. But in chapter 18, we find that Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem for his final time. He's in the last 2 weeks of his life here on earth, okay, before he's crucified. So he's on his way, making his way that way. And there are several stories that occur in chapter 18 that I'm not going to teach fully, but just allude to here. First, there's one where it says mothers were bringing their babies to Jesus because he wanted him to lay his hands on them, on their babies, and bless them. And the disciples said, don't bother him with that stuff. Take him away. You're bothering him. He ain't got time for little kids. Jesus said, let the little kids come. He said, of such is the kingdom of God. This is how you need to be. If you want to receive Christ, you need to be like a little child. So let them come. I want to lay hands on them and pray for them. I love to do that with babies. I get to see your baby when it's born. What I love to do first off is just take that baby up in my arms and pray for him. I'm not Jesus, but I'd like to pray in his name and bless them. That's a cool thing. And Jesus wanted the children to come to him. He wanted to accept them. He wasn't too uppity. He wasn't too proud. And he wasn't too busy. And the good news is he's not too busy for us either. And then after that, he moves along a little bit. And the next story there in the chapter is one we know of as the rich young ruler. Remember that story? There's this guy who was from a very prominent family. They called him a ruler because he was like a prince. He was aristocracy in that time. He was very wealthy. And he came to Jesus and said, good teacher, what must I do to be saved? And Jesus said, well, don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery, do what the law says, don't bear false witness, honor your father and mother. And the young guy said, I've done that since I was just a boy. I know how to do that. And in one of the other accounts, not the one in Luke, but another, it says when Jesus looked at him, it says he loved him. He just loved him outright. He didn't dislike him because he was wealthy. He didn't like him because he was wealthy. That was irrelevant to Jesus. He just saw him and he loved him. He said, well, this is what you need to do. You need to go sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and come follow me. Now, before anybody panics, he doesn't require that of all of us, but he probably does require that we be willing to do that if he asks. But he said that because he saw the hang-up in this man's heart, that he was hung up on his wealth. He says the guy went away sad because he was very wealthy, and he just couldn't see past doing that. And then the third verse, as he came approaching Jericho, there was a buzz about somebody coming. There was always a crowd around him. Reminds me, years ago I went to the Masters golf tournament. Now, I'm not a golf person really, but I was told if you ever get a chance to go to the Masters, you ought to go because it's a hard ticket to get. So I went just because it's a hard ticket to get. While I was there, I noticed that there was this crowd that would just kind of move along the course. And when I went to see why, it's because that's where Tiger was golfing. Okay? And wherever Tiger was, there was a whole crowd following him because they were interested in being up close to Tiger. Well, it's sort of like that. There was always an entourage around Jesus. They wanted to see what he was going to do next. He was unpredictable, and he was good. And if you were sick, you wanted to be there. If you had a kid that was sick, you wanted to bring him there. Whatever, there was this buzz. And there was a blind man there close to Jericho who heard the buzz. And he said, who is that? What's up? They said, that's Jesus of Nazareth coming this way. And it says he started crying out with a loud voice, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Now note the change there. They said it's Jesus of Nazareth. They were giving just a Associated Press version of who it was. He was Jesus, he was from Nazareth, that's who he was. But this guy understood better than what they explained it. He started calling him by a messianic name, by a name that identified Jesus as the Messiah. He said, Jesus, Son of David. That was a title for the Messiah. Son of David, have mercy on me. Of course, he'd never seen Jesus before, being a blind guy, but he'd heard of him. That was meant to be funny, wasn't it? Okay. That's a Social Security joke. You don't get it till you're 65. He said, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And he kept telling. They told him, be quiet. Now, why do you reckon they told him to be quiet? Because Jesus is too important for you, buddy. You're blind. You're a reject. They didn't say that, but they were saying that. Leave him alone. Now, he'd been healing people all over the country. Why would they tell him that? Said that he was just not worthy of Jesus' time. He was not acceptable to Jesus. Now, all of these stories are pertinent to what we're going to learn about and looking at Zacchaeus in a minute. And Jesus said, bring him to me. He brought him to him and said, what is it you want from me? He said, I want to get my sight. He said, okay, your faith has restored your sight. The guy could see. Blind guy, all of a sudden he could see. It says he started glorifying God, praising God, loudly, making a big noise. And everybody else, when they realized what had happened, they were praising God too. You know, somebody got healed of blindness in here, we'd be shouting a little bit too. We shout for a lot less than that. Gladly. So there was a big noise, and this is the noise that drew Zacchaeus' attention. As Jesus then approaches Jericho to come through town, Zacchaeus, who is the chief tax collector there, hears the big noise. There's a big noise because people are shouting, praising God, glorifying God, and it says he wanted to see who this Jesus was. He was curious. What he wanted was to see this famous rabbi. That's what he wanted. What he's going to get is what he needed, and that's what we want to talk about. Well, first let's talk about what was the condition of a tax collector in Jesus' day. Tax collectors were their own special kind of scum. They were the worst. People hated them because they were the agents to collect taxes, which is bad enough, for the occupying Roman Empire. Okay, so the nation that had conquered them was forcing them to pay taxes, and they hired people to do that for them. A tax collector, the chief tax collector, basically was a small businessman. He got the contract to handle the tax collection, and the government said, for this district that we give you, we need this amount of money. Now go collect what you want, just make sure we get this amount. And there was an acceptable upcharge to that. I mean, he was expected to make a living, and he had to hire some people to help him. And so they would do that. In some cases, the tax collectors gathered exorbitant amounts. Now, they had the weight of the government behind them. If you didn't pay up what they said, they could bring the soldiers and force you to pay it or haul you off. So he had the power to collect, and the tax collectors in general could collect pretty much what they wanted. And they often did. Some were unscrupulous and some were not as bad. But all of them were universally hated because they weren't just representing the Romans, they were Jews representing the Romans. They were traitors. They were hated. And the Romans despised them too, because they were Jews, for one thing. They just didn't like them. And secondly, they were those who had kind of turned on their own people. So nobody liked them. Their circle of friends was pretty much just the other tax collectors that they knew. It was a small little circle. Now, they had money, so they could do kind of things that they wanted. You know, they had all the newest toys or whatever they wanted to buy, but they didn't have acceptance. They weren't received by friends. They were rejects socially. And this is what they were. Now, it seems to me from the passage there that Zacchaeus was probably wealthy because he was efficient at collecting the taxes. Because consider this. He says, I'm going to give half of everything I own away to the poor. And then, if I have defrauded anyone, I will give them back 4 times as much as I've defrauded them. Which, if you do the math, that means he couldn't have taken more than about 12.5% over what he was allowed. So it wasn't like he was one of those really exorbitant extorters of tax collector, but he was still a tax collector and was rejected as such. But there he is. He's gone down ahead of where Jesus was coming. He's climbed up in a tree so he can see Jesus. He's curious. He wants to see this guy. I saw on Facebook this week some friends of mine in Bangladesh got to see the Pope when he visited there. They were all excited that they saw the Pope that week. Okay? They're not Catholic, so that didn't excite them from that standpoint. It was just a famous personage. And Zacchaeus was kind of in that mode. I want to see this guy. He's well known. You know what Jesus did? He walked right up to that tree, and he looked up in that sycamore tree, and he called Zacchaeus by name. He said, Zacchaeus, come down. Now, how do you know his name? Well, there's possibilities. Maybe the people in the crowd was there. There's that old Zacchaeus, that little runt of a mean tax collector. Maybe he heard it that way. There's no indication he knew him personally beforehand. I suspect God just told him his name. But he went and he called him by name. You know, Dale Carnegie says the 2 sweetest words that to anybody is their first name and their last name. People love to hear their name. He went and he called him by name. Said, Zacchaeus. He just about fell out of the tree, I expect. Zacchaeus, hurry up. and come down, because I must go to your house today. It says he made haste and he came down. Not only did he call him by name, but he went to his house, the one who's rejected by everyone in town. Jesus could have retained a better reputation if he'd just ignored that guy up in the tree. Just don't make eye contact. Just walk on by. But that wasn't Jesus. That isn't Jesus. He went there and he said, come down, Zacchaeus, come down. I want to go to your house and eat with you. Zacchaeus came on down and got to the house. I'm sure he had servants there. He had them scrambling to get food on the table. He calls in his buddies, the 8 other tax collectors around, and they're going to have a feast. And notice how the people who were following Jesus, the same ones who were praising God because he'd healed this blind man, the same ones saying, look what a bum he is. He's going to the house of a sinner. In fact, when they talk about sinners, they talk about sinners and tax collectors. They were their own special class of sinners. They were the worst. He's gone into the house of a sinner. See, he's keeping bad company. He's got bad friends here. That's what they said. But he got there, and we don't have a record of the conversation that took place between Jesus and Zacchaeus. All we know is that as a result of whatever's going on there, Zacchaeus gets up and says, I'm gonna give half of everything I have. He's a wealthy man. I'm gonna give half of what I have to the poor. You know, we teach here that the first 10% of what you get is God's, and you ought to give it to him. We teach that. We believe that. We don't twist your arm on that. We just believe that's what the Bible teaches. So we tell you that. Don't take 50%. That's pretty extravagant. He said, I'm gonna give half what I have to the poor. Why? He didn't, and Jesus said after they said, salvation has come to this house today. It hadn't come to that house because he gave the money. He gave the money because the salvation had come. And there's a difference there, and we don't teach that you should give in order to obtain God's favor. Believe me, he can't be bought for 10% of what you make. I don't care how much you make. He's worth more than 10% of that. What he wants is your heart.
That's right.
He wants your heart. And he saw there that had Zacchaeus about. He said, I perceive that salvation's come to this house today. See, you're a son of Abraham. You already have access to the covenant. That's what he's saying by saying you're a son of Abraham. You're in the group that has access to God by virtue of a covenant. And I've come to seek and to save that which was lost. It's interesting, he didn't say, I've come to seek and to save those who were lost, but that which was lost. Talking about the communion that people could have. I've come to reestablish that. That's what Jesus is saying there. He's saying, here's one who has access to that covenant, and I've come to reestablish a connection with him. I want to restore him. And Zacchaeus was saved in the Old Testament sense at that point. Okay, that's a great story. That's a cool story. But you know what? There are a lot of things that Jesus did that didn't get recorded. There's a lot more. In fact, in John, he says that if everything that was written, everything he did was written down, it would fill all the books in the world. You know, it's just too much. We can't write it all. But the things that were written down, the things that God saw fit to preserve for your sake and my sake, were things that teach us. This is not just a story about a tax collector. It's a story about us. And it's a story about how God looks at us. And so what I'm saying is God sees us, and he wants to express to us his acceptance of us as people. I want to give a caveat there. I want to make sure you understand what I'm not saying. He doesn't approve of your sin. He's not saying, I don't care what you do, I love you anyway. Kind of the cheap grace sort of gospel that some people preach. I'm not preaching that. I'm saying what God wants is he wants to set you free where you feel like Zacchaeus and you give God anything he wants because he's God. And because he reached out and saved you. That's what he wants to do. And he wants to tell you, each of you, and there's some people in here this is going to matter to, and if this is you, please listen good. God doesn't care what you did. He cares what you do. And that he wants you to come to him. But whatever that is, he accepts you in spite of that. He accepts you in spite of the fact that you stole that stuff. He accepts you in spite of the fact that you committed adultery. He accepts you in spite of the fact that you are ugly to your wife or to your husband. He accepts you because he created you.
Right.
And he's come to seek and to save that which was lost and to reestablish that connection with you. Can I show that to you another place in Scripture?
Yes.
Okay, let's look at that. Thank you, Charity. Love that girl. That comes through really good on the tape, too. If you ever watch it, you can always hear her. Yes. Thank you. I asked her to sit there. There's a scripture in Ephesians 1. I'm going to read verses 3 through 6. You can read a little more context there, and it would be good, too. It says this, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places in Christ, just as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world." You might just as well say, he called you by name, because he knows your name. Just like he knew Zacchaeus' name, he knows your name. He's calling you by name. He chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love, having predestined us to adoption as sons by Jesus Christ to himself. He wants to go to your house. In Revelation 3:20, it says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock, and if anyone hears my voice and will open the door, I'll come in and I'll sit down and dine with him and him with me." Do you understand that? He wants to come to your house. He knows your name, and he wants to come to your house and talk with you. I'm not talking about your physical house. You understand that, right? I'm not talking about your house. I'm talking about your house that he wants to come to. And he wants to sit down and eat with you. You know, I really like to eat with people. You really fellowship good in that way. Well, I like to eat with people often. That's good. But there is a fellowship that occurs around the table that's really special. Maybe better than any other, or better than most anyway. It's a common way to bond with other people as friends, is to eat together. Jesus says, I want to do that with you in a spiritual sense. I want to come to your house. I want to come in. I want to sit down. I want to get to know you. I want to know about your kids. I want to know about your aspirations. I want to know about what you're sad about. I want to fellowship with you. That's what he wants to do. And just because I can't stand to not finish the verse here. According to the good pleasure of his will, to the praise of the glory of his grace, I love this part, by which he made us accepted in the beloved. You, if you know Christ, if you open that door and let him come in, if you know him, he says that he has made you. You didn't make you. He made you accepted in the beloved. Because of what Jesus did. Not because of you, you failed. Look in the mirror, the same as the rest of us. We all failed. We didn't measure up. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. You know what that means? It means we fail to be perfect. And if we fail to be perfect, we don't measure up to God. Everybody got that? I need to go over that and you understand that. We're not perfect. God is. Therefore, we fall short of his glory. Well, all of us are in that boat. The law came to define that for us, that we're all in one pot together, and that's the pot of the lost. And he came to reconcile us and to seek. That means hunt for. He came to seek and to save that which was lost, to pull you up out of that pot and put you in the pot of the redeemed. That's what he came for. And because he did that, he will call you, the one who failed, the one who fails. He will call you accepted in the beloved. And that's what Zacchaeus needed. What Zacchaeus wanted is he wanted to see Jesus. He wanted to satisfy his curiosity. What he needed was to know that the God of all creation accepted him in spite of the fact that he chose to be a tax collector. He might have chosen to be a tax collector to get back at all the people who made fun of him for being a little short fellow. I made that part up, but it makes sense. But he found someone who would forgive him even of that wickedness. He said, come on, Zacchaeus. I want to go to your house. And he's saying that to us, saying, come on. I'd like to go to your house. Now, you might already be saved. And if you're already saved, then it's not the it's not that part of coming to your house I'm talking about. But a lot of us, when we're saved, we still kind of say, okay, we think of Jesus as a fire insurance rider on our policy. He's keeping us out of hell, for which I'm grateful. Can I tell you, there's a whole lot more to it than that. There's a whole lot more to what he has for you and for me if we will just say, come on, go to the house with me. Or actually, he said, come on, I'm going to your house with you, if you let him. That's what he wants from you and from me, is that we sit down with him. There's another scripture, I'm sorry I didn't put it on the board here, it's in 1 John, that says that we will one day see him when he appears. We will see him and we will be like him because we see him as he is. Now, I think that's important because if we will see him now as he is, if we will see Jesus as he is, it changes us. Just like when Zacchaeus sat down in his house and hung out with Jesus a little bit, it changed him. It made him generous. It made him repentant of anything he'd done wrong. He just, whatever it is, if we will get and see Jesus, get up close to him and see Jesus as he is, we'll find that we start to become kind and generous and willing to make restitution and patient and joyful. And you know the list. The fruit of the Spirit begins to just pop out on us. And we become a fruit tree for the fruit of the Spirit because we've been with Jesus. Behold, he's standing at the door and he's knocking. If you don't know him as your Savior, I want to invite you today, come to know him. If you'll just come up here during the time that the band sings here in a few minutes, if you'll just come forward, I'll explain to you how to know him. Okay? I'm not gonna just say out a broadcast prayer and ask you to pray after me and then count your hands. I'm not gonna do that. I want to look you in the eye and talk to you about Jesus. But if you need to know him, come on up here. I'll introduce you to him. Won't twist your arm. If you decide you don't want him after we talk, you can go back to your seat lost. But if you want to know him, I'll introduce you. And you can come. Salvation can come to your house today. If you already know him, but just don't hang out with him much. Let me invite you. Let him come to your house. Maybe you need to come to the altar, pray a little bit. If you do, it's open for your benefit. If you want to stay right where you are, that's okay. Sometimes it helps you to come to the altar and with your body say, God, I want to change because I want to see you as you are. And I'd like for you to come to my house and hang out. If that's you today, come to the altar. Pray a little bit. If you want me to pray with you, I'll pray with you. If I get backed up, somebody else come pray with you. Okay? But let's stand together as the band comes now. I hope I gave them right. Yeah, there they are. Okay. As they lead us in worship, you do what God calls you to do and respond. Take him to the house today, all right? you did. He sees who you are, that He transformed you. That ought to excite you. That ought to thrill you. Because He came to set us free. He calls you righteous. He calls you holy. He calls you worthy because He made you that. Okay? Sing it again. His, I hope you are. If you'd have a seat for just a second, this being the first Sunday of the month, we always want to introduce any people who have decided to join us as new members. And so we're going to do that. Before I do, I want to just remind any visitors, if you're with us today, please stop by our welcome desk back here in the corner. We have a little gift we'd like to give you, and we'd just like to meet you. So stop back.